It was now called Abydos. We used to go to Abydos. From here, it's about maybe 2.5 hours. And we don't go there now because of the road construction. We went there one time. It swung us way out in the desert. We didn't get back to the hotel at that time until almost 12 o'clock midnight. And so because of that, and worst of all, when you go all the way there, then they don't allow you, for whatever reason, you can't video, you can't take any pictures. So to drive 2.5 hours and go down there and you can't take pictures or videos, then, you know, that's a problem. So when you were asking about the king's list, then that king's list is there. But the whole resurrection of Ashra, you see that also in this temple right here. But as Balaway was saying, that these are not Greek temples. The Greeks came here, for those of you on the bus, when I was talking, I was saying that the Greeks came here and usurped the throne of ancient Kemet. These temples were already ancient temples. As we said before, as you go into the temple, you're going further and further back. So previous Nisus going all the way back to the Shimsu Haru. Those are the followers of Haru. When I was in the Giza Plateau, I was talking about how they're the ones that laid out the Giza Plateau. Also, there are areas in this temple to show the previous kings going all the way back to Zoser, also to Khufu, Imhotep, the Middle Kingdom, Pepi, and even coming down to the New Kingdom down during the time of Menkaparat, Jehudi Maize III, and others. So that tells us that these temples were already, built. When the Greeks came on the scene, they were following the tradition of the Nisus here in Kemet. And that tradition was when you came to power, you built onto the temple. So the Greeks equally wanted to have their names, their pictures, and so forth on the temple. But one thing the Greeks could not do is to read Medu Neter. When you go inside and see that the Shinus, I was about to say Ketush, that's a Greek word, but the Shinus are blank because they could not read the Medu Neter. The only Ptolemy who could read the Medu Neter is Cleopatra. But before I get to her, the story, and I'll go through it as quick as I can, the story is on the background, starting with the early Greeks that I said before, who came here, like Thales, Pythagoras. Those were the Greek philosophers who came here and studied, even though none of them finished their total initiation. But Alexander, that we are taught to call the Great, nothing great about him, when he came here, he got Aristotle to plunder the libraries. This was a great library of scrolls. It took thousands of years for the Kemetians, from their spiritual system, of their observation of Mount Neter, to study this spiritual system and build these libraries. But it was Alexander that got Aristotle to plunder these libraries, to building the Alexandria Library. We all heard of the Alexandria Library, right? But they don't tell you where they plundered from. So that started the tradition after Alexander's death. The Ptolemies built a library and called it Alexandria Library in the area of Alexandria and the Delta that's named after him, because he wanted all the knowledge of Kemet to be housed in one place. That was 300 years for the Greeks to start to study intensely ancient Kemetic spiritual stories. Then as we see time goes on, and now the Romans are coming on the scene. At this time, Julius Caesar takes and usurped the throne from Pompey. He comes here and now he's on the throne, but at that time, Cleopatra was not on the throne. Cleopatra VII, there were 7 of them. But the Cleopatra VII, the one that you know the most, she was not on the throne. But now we see her sister Arsinoe and her brother was on the throne. Now, when Julius Caesar came in, so he's in the power now. Cleopatra was exiled by her sister and brother, but she felt that she could work some magic on Julius Caesar. So what she did was roll herself up in a rug and came and got her nobles to sneak her into the palace. And then she rolled herself out in front of Julius Caesar, and then she was able to seduce him by taking him to the royal bedroom. And she worked some power. She whipped it on him. And when she came out, I mean, Julius Caesar, he was all captivated by Cleopatra. In fact, they even had a son named Caesarion. And they even went to Rome with this baby. And the Senate got upset because that baby, to grow up to be a man, would rule over Egypt and Rome. And they didn't want that, so the Senate killed Julius Caesar. And then the general, Marc Antony, Julius Caesar's #1 general. It was Octavian at this time, the nephew of Julius Caesar, because he didn't have no kids with the exception of Cleopatra's son, and that's Caesarion, named after him. So Octavian said, I'm gonna make a plan, because I know Marc Antony is a big playboy, They were dividing up the world at this time of this new world order. Octavian said, Mark Antony, you take all of Egypt. So Mark Antony was happy to come here, and Cleopatra saw him, and she took him into the royal bed palace and worked her magic on him. When he came out, he said all the land that Rome had conquered, and all the Romans who had died for these lands of Babylonia, Tigris, Euphrates, and all these places, Cleopatra, you can have it all. I mean, she whipped it. You can have it all. And okay, now Octavian, he was upset that Mark Antony would give all this land that they had conquered now to Cleopatra, because Cleopatra was working for Kemet to be the world power that it once was. And she was going to use these Roman emperors and also the general of Mark Antony to do it. So she told Mark Antony, look, we got to have a big war. We got to go up against Octavian. And Mark Antony said, go up against my people, the Romans? I can't do that. She took him back in the bedroom and whipped it again. She worked some magic on. He came out and said, yes, we're going to go to war against Rome, and we'll be the power again. Egypt will be the power, and Cleopatra and Caesarion will be the ruler. So it was a big war at Actium. It was a sea battle in the Mediterranean. So Octavian got all his ships. Mark Antony and Cleopatra got all their ships, and they went to war. And then as Cleopatra looked out and saw that Mark Antony was losing the war, Octavian was winning, so she took off with her ship and went back to Egypt. Now Mark Antony and Cleopatra made a pact if they lost the war that they would commit suicide. So she told her nobles that, look, if Mark Antony come, tell him that I committed suicide. So Mark Antony, knowing he's losing the war, he runs and follows Cleopatra. He runs into the palace. Where's Cleopatra? Mark Antony's on his way. He's going to kill both of us, so we got to commit suicide. So what he did, when they told him that Cleopatra committed suicide, then he fell on his Roman knife and killed himself. So now we see that here comes Octavian. Cleopatra's afraid because she saw what happened to her sister. Julius Caesar took a sin away and marched her through the streets of Rome and put her in this big cage to be humiliated, because that's what the Romans did. They didn't want to kill you at first. They wanted to humiliate you, and the people would throw stones at the cage. And Cleopatra witnessed this with her own sister, so she didn't want that. So she said, can I work my magic one more time? Maybe with Octavian. But when Octavian came into the royal palace, she knew she could not work the magic anymore, because he was flaming. I'm telling you, Octavian came in there, it was something that was unknown. She looked, and she knew her power couldn't work with that. He came in flaming. You know what I mean? That means he like boys. Only thing to work with him was a boy. So she realized that all the power that she had, all the Netaroos couldn't even help this situation. Okay. So Octavian told her, look, get ready, get the cage ready, we're gonna bring you in. But she got her nobles to sneak out of the palace and bring that cobra back. And there she took and laid the cobra on her breast. Why a cobra? Because that was one of the great symbols of ancient Kemet. She said, if I'm going to leave, let the cobra take me. And the cobra bit her, and that was the end of ancient Kemet. Now keep in mind that Kemet was not Kemet at this time. It's Egypt, because the Greeks are ruling at this time, brothers and sisters. Kemet had already ended with Nectanebo. He was indigenous to the Nile Valley. Cleopatra, her father, was of Ptolemy. Conquerors do not come in with their wives, right? So what does armies do? They rape the women. So her background may have been a Kemetic, her mother may have been, and grandmother was a Kemetic African, but her Ptolemaic line was through the men, her father Ptolemies. So we see that she definitely had an African background, but the people who came in who were ruling were the Ptolemies, and one of those Ptolemies was her father. So that gives us a story and a history, brief history, about how that happened. And this is where now Octavian changes his name to Augustus Caesar. Why Augustus Caesar? Because he defeated Kemet in the 30th of August. And he started time at that time, so it became 1 AD. So, and then he changed his name to Augustus because it was the month of August. Octavian for October. So every time you say a month, you're saying a Roman emperor. Whether it's September for Septicus Severus, Septicus Severus, or July for Julius Caesar. So they put their names in everything, so you're constantly evoking their spirit for their history to last for eternity. So every time you write 2021, you're adhering with Augustus Caesar laid down time, starting at that time that we're in right now, adhering to their time. If we deal with the ancient calendar of Kemet, at least we should be writing 6,251. 61 rather. Okay, or 62. At least that.